Oh. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to each and every one of you around the world. I welcome you to the 2024 CSW 68 Parallel Wrap-Up Session, as sponsored by the Federation of International Gender and Human Rights and Harbor Heritage University. I am Dr. Amina Ali, and I will be your host and moderator for today. Today's special guest will be speaking from the diaspora on the solutions for gender and human rights and sending us gems of wisdom that will embark upon us as we search for solutions for gender and human rights violations. They have joined us on our prior session, which is called Let's Address the Issues, and they were great speakers and great orators in the academician as well as the social policy that we needed to hold in place for gender and human rights violations. Of course, we welcome back to the stage Ambassador Dr. Chisala Chichiwala, Madam Kyra Lee from the West Coast, and we have, of course, Queen Mother Dr. Catherine Hall Trujillo, who is reigning from Cuba today. She is coming to us, and she is at her 20th anniversary of her Santeria initiation. So this is an amazing, amazing event. And then and of course, we have one of our academicians that is very near and dear to me and even closer to Queen Mother. We have Dr. Tamu Green, who will be joining us also as an orator and a speaker today for our mission. So we're going to be talking about the wrap-up session, Speaking Truth to Power in Affordable Solutions. And we're going to be talking about our PowerPoints today. So these are things that we're going to be setting aside and specializing in what it is that we can do right now. Small things, communal things, poli-sci things, political health things, even public health things, and things that we are known to use and orchestrate in everyday lives to bring solutions. I want to welcome Columbia University, and I also want to welcome NYU and Fordham School of Law, who are here today, and they are going to be with us throughout the entire hour we are here today. We are going to be moderating from each of our panelists, and then we will do a Q&A, and then we will close out with a gem. Simple, easy. But what we are here to do today is we're going to speak to the specialties that each of them bring. Of course, they were on prior sessions, and they're going to just wrap up a session with a question that they have and that was posed to them. And they're going to give their insights to this as we talk about today's affordability. So it could be something short and sweet and succinct, or it can be something that is pathological and intentional in its bringing. But either way, the question is designed to allow you a piece and allow you another puzzle piece that you can put together to orchestrate your solutions for gender and human rights. We are brought together today, and one of our sponsorships is going to be from a woman that has brought a great fervor here. And she is doing a documentary, and I'm going to out her a little bit. Veronica Starling, she is doing a documentary on the Path of the Panther, which is an anthology speaking of what the Black Panthers did, what we're doing now, and then what will be left as a legacy for the future. And she's going to be featuring Madam Kyra Lee. And she's also going to be doing a documentary based on the works. As you know, Madam Kyra Lee is a legacy and brings great energy from the mother, her mother was a Black Panther mother, Myra Lee. And is it Myra? I said that right, correct?
Myra is actually my sister, but Gail Thompson Lee is my
Gail
mom.
Thompson Lee. Okay,
Thompson Lee.
Myra, see, I got the names confused. But yes, Mother Lee was a Black Panther in her own right. And of course, Madam Kyra Lee has stepped into her footsteps, and she is the new paws that are treading this path. And I think that it is going to be a great, great read into what it is that we are looking to do. So with all protocols in place, I greet you today, High Commissioners, ambassadors, emissaries, diplomats, dignitaries, honorees, guests, fellow attendees, and of course, Columbia, NYU, and Fordham University. Welcome. Thank you so very much for joining us today. Thank you for bringing your students. Thank you for the live stream, and thank you for the support. I really appreciate it. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in. Dr. Chisala Bwala is our first speaker of the day. He's reigning from the Republic of Zambia. He is a doctor of gender. He has a doctorate in gender and human rights. He also is a licensed and certified chaplain in the field as an international interfaith professional chaplain. He reigns from the Republic of Zambia and has a research center. And as of March 1st, he is the new reigning director of research for Harbor Heritage University. So I'm so proud to bring him on. He wears many hats, but his dissertation is very simple: gender and human rights solutions and the research behind it. So, Dr. Bwala, I am going to ask you this question. Please give us 2 or 3 things that excite you in your research, that we look forward to in the future of your research and your tenure with HHU, please.
Sure. Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you so much for having me today. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I'm thrilled to present to you the groundbreaking research advancements that lie ahead in gender and human rights. Now, today, I will share 3 key areas that hold promise for future research in this domain. Drawing examples from Africa and the rest of the world, I will also highlight the relevance of various human rights instruments in solidifying our approach. So I'm going to talk about 3 key things. So let's delve into this. So the first point I want to talk about is harnessing technology for gender equality and empowerment. Harnessing technology for gender equality and empowerment. Now, I would like to kickstart this with a case study of a mobile health application in Africa. Now, I wanted to understand that a significant development in Africa is the utilization of mobile health applications to promote gender equality in healthcare. For instance, platforms like Mobile Midwife in Ghana and Mom Connect in South Africa leverage mobile technology to provide critical maternal health information and support to women in rural and underserved areas. Now, these initiatives align with Article 12 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which emphasizes the right to the highest attainable standard of health. Secondly, drawing from a global example, we can talk about digital platforms for economic empowerment. Now, digital platforms are emerging as powerful tools for enhancing women's economic empowerment globally. Platforms such as SheWorks and Women's World Banking facilitate access to job opportunities, financial services, and entrepreneurship resources. Now, this approach resonates with Article 11 of the Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women, which recognizes women's rights to work, equal pay, and access to credit and financial services. The second point I'd like to talk about is strengthening legal frameworks and accountability. Strengthening legal frameworks and accountability. So, drawing from Africa, there has been a great trend now. There's been a great progress in criminalizing female genital mutilation. Now, Africa has witnessed significant advancements in the legal framework to combat harmful practices. In countries like Burkina Faso, the Gambia, South Sudan, legislation has been enacted to criminalize female genital mutilation, thereby protecting the rights of women and girls. Now, these efforts align with the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, on the rights of women in Africa, the Maputo Protocol specifically, which specifically addresses harmful practices and violence against women. Secondly, drawing from a global example, global momentum, there has been ratification of the Istanbul Convention. So now the Council of Europe's Istanbul Convention has gained increasing global support.
Oh, I think we lost him. Ambassador Bwala. Yes, okay, we have you back. We have you back.
Demonstrates, yes. So the recent ratification of the convention by countries outside Europe, such as Argentina and Tunisia, demonstrates the growing recognition of the need for comprehensive legal frameworks to address gender-based violence. Now, the Istanbul Convention embodies the principles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, emphasizing the right to life, liberty, and security of a person. Thirdly, I would like to talk about intersectionality and inclusive policies. Now, drawing from the African examples or the African advancement, there has been women's political representation. Now, dear students and dear delegates, African countries have made remarkable strides in promoting women's political representation. Rwanda, for instance, has achieved notable success with over 60% of parliamentary seats held by women. This progress aligns with the Southern African Development Community SADC protocol on gender and development, emphasizing the need for gender-balanced representation in decision-making positions. And drawing from a global impetus or global perspective, we can also talk about the LGBTQ rights and non-discrimination. Now, the global movement for the LGBTQ rights has gained momentum, with numerous countries adopting progressive policies and legal frameworks. South Africa's constitution, for instance, explicitly prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Now, such progress is consistent with the principles enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, emphasizing equality, non-discrimination, and the right to freedom of expression and association. Now, in conclusion, to sum it all, the future of gender and human rights research, ladies and gentlemen, holds tremendous promise. By harnessing technology, strengthening legal frameworks, and embracing intersectionality, we can foster inclusive societies that protect and promote the rights of all individuals. Drawing inspiration from examples in Africa and the rest of the world, and aligning our efforts with human rights instruments such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Maputo Protocol, and many other instruments, we can forge a path towards a more equitable and just world. Together, let us embark on this transformative journey, ensuring that gender equality and human rights remain at the forefront of our research, policies, and actions. I thank you.
I thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bwala. I really appreciate that. That was amazing. You touched on a few points, bond-breaking solutions. I love that term. You're gonna hear that again. But harnessing the gender equality and empowerment, that speaks to the leadership that we're looking for. That also looks for the specific intention. And I'm real big on intention when we do things, because if we're doing it for the money or if we're doing it for the Instagram pictures, it really loses its shine. But when you spoke about the legal frameworks and accountability, that really triggered me, because I'm real big on trying to be transparent and accountable, especially in fire and harbor heritage, putting that out there as our framework, so that all of the transparencies of what we do will be seen. But that intersectionality and inclusive policies, that bonding and bridging, speaks to the leadership we're about to go into. Kyra Lee, Madam Lee, is going to be speaking about the social construct of women's leadership. And I think that that's where we have to, bridge. It's been 20 years since 21 years this year for the Maputo Protocol, and most people don't even know about it. But that is our social construct for those women of the diaspora, as far as our rights and our roles and our rules and the things that are promised to us, and these rights that we tend to not see in legal government. But we have them, and it's been written in plain English. It's not even legal jargon. And it's been orchestrated for us for 21 years now. But how many of us can say that we read it frontwards to back? I know you have, but how many of us can say that we read it from cover to cover? How many of us can understand what each of them means and the tactics behind it? So, Madam Lee, we're going to open the door for you to bridge that gap. We talked about the social construct of women's leadership, and that has been lensed um, for women, by women, and about women. And that's pretty gender-based, and that is intentional. But what is your viewpoint on how women's leadership should be seen? And what are the variables about said leadership that should be reevaluated in our communities? And try to give us some examples, please.
Absolutely. Earlier in this week, we discussed context and the importance of positioning when we talk about women in leadership. We have to be careful not to other. We have to be careful not to empower through the other, meaning that it is presumed that leadership is for men and that women need to be added to leadership that is assigned to men. We have to be careful about that narrative. Historically, women have been at the helm of multiple forms of social justice, including civil rights movement. You will find Rosa Parks and Fannie Lou Hamer. The Black feminist movement, you will find Audre Lorde and Bell Hooks and Angela Davis. The Chicano movement, you will find Dolores Huerta and others fighting for Mexican American and Latinx rights. In Asian American activism, you will find Yuri Kuchiyama, who has been at the helm of fighting for our Japanese authentically on the ground. Indigenous rights movements, you will find Winona LaDuke and Wilma Mankiller, who led the charge tirelessly to address issues in the Indigenous communities. Immigration rights, United We Dream, led by Ms. Gresa Martinez Rosas. And to Dr. Chisala's point, at the helm of the LGBTQ rights, you will find folks like Marsha P. Johnson and others. It is important that we establish fact that women have always led. This is not new, and it will continue to be the case. We have to establish this as a norm because it has been. We have to accept this as a fact because it has been. So we are not adding women to leadership. We are continuing to empower the women already leading. That is an important distinction. Next, moving forward into the present, when we talk about the next steps for you leaders that are tuning in, you have to establish the gaps. You have to loudly champion the gaps. This is not new information. You are in the digital age where you can look into a cell phone and find all the support you need for the changes that you want. It is true that in Fortune 500 companies, as an example, women CEOs only make up 8.2% as of 2021, according to Catalyst. Yet we know that every time there is a global public relations issue, who do they put in positions to lead the correction? Usually a woman of color. Usually a woman of color. Stop empowering us to fix when we are fully capable of leading the solution correctly in the first place. We are not here to clean up behind folks. We are here to implement policy and procedure that makes sense in the first place. And we've been doing it for years. Next, in the political space, 25 countries have women serving as heads of state. Again, this is the contemporary norm. This is what is existing in women in leadership. So to keep asking others to create spaces for women is not the ask. It is to acknowledge that women are powerfully leading in these spaces and continue to amplify their voices. They're lifting the load perfectly on their own. Educational attainment. Women are currently outnumbering our male counterparts in higher education. So sexism and gender assignment stigma, where your implicit bias sees someone of female experience and then says she is less than, would be ignorant at this point in history, because we do have the degrees and the education and the lived experience to speak to the things that we are affecting on a daily basis. That is a fact. Moving forward to the pay gap. What does it mean to motivate a person financially that is already doing the work? If we take gender out of it and we just look at our roles in creating solutions, what does it look like to take gender completely off of an application and pay a person what they're worth? We're not asking you to pay women more because they're women. We're asking you to pay women what a qualified person should earn. And why is there any pushback? Because the most competent person should be assigned the role, should be lifted up in the space and empowered to succeed. in necessary solutions. There should be no difference because the person happens to be female. Barriers of advancement currently are for you listeners to define. It is for you to keep speaking out about the challenges that we find in our peers. It is for us to be accountable about the way that women are treated at these tables and to exercise intervention and disruption on behalf of your peers. If the best person for the job is a woman, say so, regardless of gender. If the most knowledgeable person to lead is a woman, say so unapologetically. She is now in the space. She now has the background and the expertise and simply needs the support of those honest enough to tell the truth. So in closing, I think that women in leadership currently have done an amazing job of getting through the door and establishing the necessary table. Now, the rest of our counterparts have got to start telling the truth about her contributions. We have got to get past the ego. We have got to sit in the fact, and we have got to let every capable voice be heard. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so very much, Madam Lee. Your stop othering, you had me there. That piece, I think that jarred me into this gender and human rights piece because as a woman of color, I was othered back in the 80s when I started my medical career. Things like, are you a real doctor? You know, those questions were asked as if I didn't sit next to you in class, you know, and that I didn't get the same knowledge. The othering as in you have to prove something other than someone else had to prove your worthiness. That was the piece that I got out of that othering. And then stop having to clean up the toxicity. You know, why are we put in there to clean up what you messed up and then say we are doing a great job? You know, I think you have a janitor for that. That's something that you know, you don't put a six-figure qualified person in there to clean up something you messed up. But the piece that really got me was establishing the gaps. And I use that last because that is something that we have to do now. There was a research report that I put in when I was doing a speaking engagement on last week. And they said it's going to take 130 calendar years, 130 calendar years. That means although we plant this tree, we won't even see it grow, you know, let alone eat the fruit from it. 130 years before we can act. And that would be if we're working at it every day, all day, doing everything necessary. Still 130 years. So, you know, the seeds have to be planted now. And this group can definitely till the soil, if nothing else. And they can get the soil moving. They can also put the seeds in there and hopefully have some miracle grow so that we can get it going fast enough so that this can be a reality in a lifetime that we can understand. Thank you, Madam Lee. I really appreciate it. And next, we're going to bring to the stage Dr. Temu Green. Now, Dr. Green is a developmental psychologist, and she is out of the West Coast. So she's there with Madam Lee. And she is at Stanford today, so she's not able to be with us in person, but she did send us an audio recording, and that is going to be played now so that we can hear who she is and hear what it is that she is going to be speaking about and why it is important for us to understand what clinical psychology is about. I think this is going to bridge the gap of seeing who she is as a person and then what her introspection is for what it is that we are going to see. But we are going to have Dr. Temu. Yes, there she is.
Developmental psychology is the scientific study of how and why humans grow, change, and adapt across the course of their lives. Originally concerned with infants and children, the field has expanded to include adolescents.
Can you hear her? Oh, wow. Why did it stop? It stopped on our end. Oh, wow. Okay. There she is. Thank you, Brendan. Okay, can you play her back from the beginning? Thank you so much. You're on the ball.
Developmental psychology is the scientific study of how and why humans grow, change, and adapt across the course of their lives. Originally concerned with infants and children, the field has expanded to include adolescence, adult development, aging, and the entire lifespan. As such, child psychology is one aspect of this field of study. Developmental psychology is not to be confused with clinical psychology, which is the psychological specialty that provides continuing and comprehensive mental and behavioral health care for individuals, couples, families, and groups, consultation to agencies and communities, training, education, and supervision, and research-based practice. Some of these practices may include cognitive behavioral approaches like cognitive behavioral therapy, that has the acronym CBT, to focus on changing thoughts and behaviors contributing to psychological distress. My degree is in human development from the University of California, Davis. During my training, I took classes in every stage of our development to understand what our unique gifts and challenges are from infancy to late adulthood. This growth takes place in context, both what we biologically inherit and the environment we are exposed to. Although we often see these as distinct aspects of our lives, nature and nurture, there are many ways that our biology and environment intersect and change each other's course. For example, healthy in utero brain development is critical for a growing fetus. Aspects of this brain development will be based on hereditary factors. However, these factors can be altered in either a positive or negative direction based on the environment that the mother, and by proxy the fetus, finds herself in. Is there enough nutritious food? Is there emotional distress? Is there violence? We can also think about how atypical development, such as being born missing a segment of chromosome or having an extra copy, is a biological phenomenon. I had a cousin with a chromosomal abnormality and experienced a tremendous developmental delay as a result. The doctors did not have a positive outlook for my neurodiverse cousin's life, but this is where the nurture side of the equation came into play. He was afforded life in a very supportive family and school setting. He was provided with responsibilities to care for his 6 younger siblings and had paid employment working in childcare with all of that experience. His environment likely shaped and redirected his biological trajectory at the synaptic level. I offer these examples to speak to your question of the relevance of developmental psychology to gender and human rights advocacy. The more we know about how our bodies, minds, and environments are connected, the better we can advocate for the kinds of conditions that optimize physical and mental well-being. That advocacy must take into account that our health begins in utero and is fully connected to the supports, resources, opportunities, and protections afforded to our mothers. And that advocacy must also take into account the investments into all of the aspects of our environments, from inclusive schools and accessible buildings to affordable housing and workforce development programs are a benefit to the entire population, but can have an even greater impact on those who would otherwise struggle to live up to their full potential.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Dr. Green. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate who you are as a woman in this. I like that. Her statement spoke to the difference between developmental and the cognitive piece. She also spoke very, very intuitively to what it is that she needed to see in her studies. And I really, really also really felt like there was a great connection to nature versus nurture. And I love that story. And I really believe in that, because a lot of what it is that we deal with in gender and human rights is, if you just treat things differently, it will come out differently. It doesn't have to be, big exorbitant words and long pathological events. It could just be supporting what already exists. And as Madam Kyra Lee said, and putting people, it says, make the qualified, what did she say? Motivate the qualified, and make those that are already qualified a great resignation in this. Now, I am going to go to some questions and answers, and then of course we're going to bring in Queen Mother, who is just going to blow us all out of the water, because she's been doing this longer than probably some of us have been alive. And it's just a joy to have her as a gem today. But we have some questions, of course, from the audience. As always, the students are just throwing in questions and they're being put in front of me. This one is for Dr. Bualia. Bond breaking solutions. Do you think that the understanding of bond breaking solution has to deal with the misogyny or the toxicity of the oppression? Oh, that's a great question.
That's a great question, and I think I'll just start from here. I'll tell you that there's still some inherent misogynies that still exist in our communities, and these are things that have put women as second-class citizens, because there are some communities that still disregard women here and there. But the question that is there is, when you look at all the toxicity, when you look at all these inherent misogynies that different societies have been holding for a long time, how can you cut those out in order for you to create a better solution in order to have a gender equal society? Because at the end of the day, if we are trying to promote a gender equal society, meaning that we have to discard all these inherent misogynies that exist within different communities. And so at the end of the day, what makes a difference is the research that we do. Because remember, research speaks to public policy. And that is why every policy that is going to come forth is stemming from a good research that has been conducted in a specific community for a specific liking. So that is what we're talking about. I'll give you a very typical example. Here in Zambia, we still have some communities, or some women in some communities, that believe that if your husband doesn't beat you in a home, then he doesn't love you, meaning that he's cheating on you with other women. That is what they believe in that community. So for them, that kind of beating is a sign of love. But when you go to another community, they'll tell you that that is gender-based violence, that is physical abuse, because you're hitting someone, and there are all those things that exist. So how can we do this work? So I'll tell you that apart from the research, again, it starts with mindset change. Going to communities and teaching them, educating them about all these inherent misogynies, teaching them about all these harmful practices that they've been enduring for a long time, that they do not know that their forms of abuse, is something that is very vital that we need to do. So what I've spoken about is, we need great research, firstly, and then secondly, we need the mindset change programs in those most affected communities, where there are people that do not understand what human rights are. There are people that do not understand what gender equality is. So there is need of doing all that kind of work on the ground. So the solutions that are bond bound should come from those same communities, by raising change makers that are going to retrieve the mindsets of those people, and also speak to great research that is going to speak to great policies that is going to combat that. Thank you.
No, that is amazing, and I can't even begin to even say how deep that was with the public health and the research piece. That was a huge tie-in. Not many people see that. Not many people see public health and research as being almost fraternal twins, because you need one with the other. You really cannot have them existing in the womb without them understanding the connection that they have with each other. So that was a huge tie-in to that. And understanding why it is that we need the research to see where we faltered, and then see where we're going to be brought forward. So Madam Lee, we're going to throw this in. Someone tapped into the othering. I think they like that term. She said that if there is a qualified woman that is seeking what she is deserving, how do we support her in the community in her advocacy? Great point. Absolutely great point.
I think that we find a lot of power Great question. I think we find a lot of power if we step away from words like deserve and we move toward words like earned. Deserving and earned, because there's an entitlement to something that someone deserves. Earned work, you are paid based on wages earned. There's a difference. It is work that has already been completed. It is work that has already been assigned value. And so we can quantify the value of anyone's work. We can measure the contribution of anyone's work. We can measure the financial, social, and mental and emotional impact on participants that witness your work. And then we take the gender out of the payment. So when we talk about advocating for a woman, we're talking about advocating for a human. And what does that look like? It looks like measuring work performed and then assigning a recognition of that work that is appropriate. And if you are not sure where to start, use a male. And simply assign the person performing the work the value that you would assign a human performing the work. And it gets very uncomplicated in that way.
Yeah, I love that. I love the way you just explained that. Oh my gosh, that's yeah, put a mail in there. Yeah, see what is broken so you know what to fix. So I like that. And Dr. Boyle, I know you're just like, what? But the humor is we understand what is already in front of us. And then we have to understand what it is that we're striving to. So that's where the tweak is. But that's amazing. All right. So this one goes to well, actually, she's not gonna go. Oh, that went to Dr. Temu, so we can't use that question. I'm so sorry. But if anyone has any question, please put it in the chat. I'll read it out loud and address who the person is for who it's going for, and then be able to answer it. And I have one in the chat here on Zoom. Thank you so much, Kristen Carruthers. This question is for Madam Lee. How do you get past ego? Ooh. Who specifically has the ego? Who specifically has the ego is she referring to? And how do you get past the ego when you're in a position of power? Ooh, great question. Oh my goodness. That is a demon I don't ever want to see again.
Much respect, Madam Crothers. Great question. I think that anytime that your emotion interrupts the facts in front of you, we have to interrogate ego. Anytime you are presented with statistics and find yourself resisting the logical outcome, we have to interrogate ego, id, superego, and so on, the psychology behind why we are irrational, why we are illogical, why our self-interest is undermining our survival instinct. Because at the end of the day, there is a human psychology to all decisions. So in the event that we are talking about group dynamic, which usually deals with project, workplace, the work, we have to be careful about moving in a way that is not in support of the outcome. So if the outcome that we want is equal gender and human rights for all, but we say women should be categorized over here in the rollout of the access of that policy, there's an implicit bias that just kicked in. Why is the woman being separated from the outcome? If we are sitting at a table discussing who is going to be empowered, either in speaking or funding or position of leadership over project, and the most qualified person happens to be a woman, but we keep leaning to this less qualified other human, we have to ask ourselves why. Lastly, ego is something visible to other people. So in your leadership, you are consistently leading without interruption. You are flowing through your workplace with your counterparts and your peers, and all of a sudden you're getting pushback. Check self. Is it possible that your ego may be flaring and others are letting you know through verbal and nonverbal communication that you're being inconsistent right now? Great question.
Nice. You know, I could speak tons of that. When I was being the only spot on the page in most of my classes coming up, I was in the what we now call the honors program. We used to call it what was it? I can't call it, but it was an honors program for the school, and it was It would be considered, oh, it's AP, advanced placement. We used to call it AP back in the day. So I was in AP classes, had an IB, International Baccalaureate, and nobody knew what that was. No one knew what they just knew high school diploma. No, I got an IB, and that was a huge thing because most people that look like me didn't do that. So now coming into this, I'm like, oh, and I'm going into medical school, and my head is just huge. And it was huge because I thought, this is me, I thought it was because I was being given the opportunity to be in these spaces. And me being a person of color and having the upbringing that I had those opportunities and that placement. But I didn't realize that I was using that as my footstool over those that weren't able to go there. So as I rose in power, I used the tenacity to say that I deserve it. There's that entitlement, that I did the work. I should have been here anyway, and I earned this place. So then the head got a little bigger when you give titles and labels, and then you are ordering that with money, and that thing will breed an ego that is bigger than the space of this room. And that is because it allows you to understand that there's support in that condoning. And that was detrimental to me because it took an elder to tell me I was FOS. We just gonna put that out there. And she had to tell me that when I was like 28 years old. And she was like, you know, you would be powerful if you would just stop smelling yourself so much. And I said, wow. And I was crying for like an hour because I couldn't understand why I was crying. One, because I was like, oh, she's just old. She doesn't know anything. But it hit my soul in that place where it was like, it was shutting down that ego, it was flipping off all those switches. That was a trigger. And it was allowing me to see that that wasn't where I needed to go with this. There was a responsibility to this, that I was the forerunner, not the sit and lay in your laurels and just, you know, hold that space for yourself. And anyone that kind of comes in, you're elbowing them out the way. You know, no, you're to open that door and build that table and put the seats there. Didn't realize that. Girl, I was in my late 30s before I even realized what that table looked like. And then by the time I got in my 40s, now I was adding chairs. Like now hitting 60, I'm like, oh, wow, I got a lot of work to do. But thank you for saying that. And thank you so very much for saying that in that term, because I needed to hear that. And I really I needed you today because that was amazing. And Madam Carruthers said, thank you. I have another question if you have the time for Kyra. It's a kind of follow-up question. There is a phenomena in the workplace. Now, Black women do not get used as a weapon against others, and they usually get discarded afterwards. Oh, yeah, you can speak to that for about 2 minutes. Yes, please. How women are discarded. They're weaponized and then discarded.
Powerful truth. So for some of us, we in the workplace, particularly women of color, heightened if you happen to be a Black woman. So there's levels to intersection, right? And in our implicit bias in the workplace, we see Black women in a light, the angry Black woman trope, the ability to utilize a Black woman's fury, rage, passion, which in another language would be emotion. It would simply just be emotion. But on a Black woman, it becomes this very fiery thing to be owned and controlled by others. So I take an independent person's feelings, I point them at a thing that they're passionate about, and then I direct the use of that energy. And it's very old slave mentality of folks that have miseducated themselves to believe that they own people, have miseducated themselves to believe that a human being can be property and therefore assigned utility. So in the workplace, yes, there is such a thing as women of color who are outspoken, who are disruptors, who are unapologetic and confident, being assigned a value like a tool, being set onto a purpose like a tool to control, to diminish, to shrink other women and people of color. I, as a non-person of color, cannot go into this all Black or brown space and say the nasty thing, but I can tell you to because you work for me. It would be inappropriate if I were the person to voice this ugly thing that's being said because ego. but they will understand it from you because you and the theys are the ours. And so we are all one people to control one another, Willie Lynch. It is very real. And it is very powerful when people acknowledge that the ugly thing you want to say is yours. And you walk your tail into that room and say the ugly thing, and then you get the response that ugly thing deserves. But stop wielding subordinates in this abusive way because we look alike. I also may not agree with you, and I'm the expert in the room. HR or project lead or CEO or COO. My title tells me that this is a terrible idea, and your ego is getting in the way of progress.
Ooh, she wrapped that up really quick. I love that. Oh, and with that, Madam Myra, thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you so very much. I said Myra intentionally because I want to thank her for that seed that she planted. No, you said it was Myra is your sister. Is correct? Yes. Okay. And I am so empowered by the blessing that has been given to us named Kyra Lee for that astounding piece that was given. Thank you. I have about 12 or 13 more questions here that we won't have time for. We have to go into our gems and the session is going to end in about 7 minutes. So what I would like to do is, first of all, thank Madam, what was her name? Carruthers, for those 2 questions that really sparked a movement in our speaking today. I also want to thank those that joined us from Columbia University and those that are here from Fordham University School of Law and then NYU. They're still here too. I thought one of them left. We can't have Queen Mother. She is in Cuba now, but her internet went down. I guess it's a blackout where she is. So we won't have her today. We did have her daughter, Temu, who came through us through pre-recorded. But I do have to thank the 2 that are here, the panelists extraordinaire, Dr. Chisala Bwalia and Madam Kyra Lee. I want to thank both of you for being here today, astounding as you are, academicians in your own right, and outstanding mentors to those that are coming after us in this lineage. So I'm going to close out with our gems. I'm going to give each of you about 2 to 3 minutes so you can expound, but I'm going to give you one question. And I want to see where the question is going to lead. And it's a daunting question as it pertains to gender and human rights, but I think we can open this up together. What is your why? I know, look at Dr. Boiler was like, really? What is your why when it comes to gender and human rights? What is your why? What is your motivation? What is your get out of bed invitation to what you do in this work? Madam Kyra, we're going to do ladies first. So Madam Kyra, please answer your question.
My why is necessity. I am the affected person. I am the person that sits at the intersection of the problem. I am the person that was wielded like a gun toward my peers. I am the person that was looked over to speak. I have had others present my ideas as their own. I have had funding assigned to folks that we funded as opposed to us being the table maker. So I would say that my why is literal. I hold the problem, the experience, the pain, and the solution, and I'm capable. And I am surrounded by mentors. I am surrounded by tribe that is also extremely capable. So I own the responsibility of the shoulders that I stand on, large shoulders, powerful shoulders, and the solutions are still needed. So my why is necessity.
Nice. Amazing. Okay, Dr. Bwali, your turn. And I know this is going to be the masculine voice that speaks to this power. So what is your why? What is the thing that allows you to get out of bed and say, yes, one more day?
I think for starters, as a child growing up in a community where there was a lot of abuse, me witnessing even part of my relatives, being in that aspect of gender-based violence, my uncles beating my aunts, my grandparents and all that, even the surrounding community where there was a lot of rape cases, defilement cases, and all those issues. I think for me, that is motivation enough to push forward, because I said to myself, if I'm not going to do it, who is going to do it? Because change will start from where I am. I cannot come and create change or impact communities in other places when I cannot clean my own backyard. So it starts from there. So my motivation is all those women that I look at every day. When I hear cases of abuse, when I hear cases of defilement, I hear cases of couples battering each other, intimate partner violence, all those things, it keeps me going every day to push forward, because I know that when there is no voice, there can be no change. There are a lot of people that have been abused in homes. There are a lot of people that would like to speak out, but they do not have the capacity to stand out and speak out and report those cases. And that is why I'm here, to speak out. I'm the voice for the voiceless. I want to impact these societies. I want to impact communities with my work. I want to give assurance to each and every man, every woman out there who's going through abuse, that we are here to support them. We are here to speak out for them. So at the end of the day, my biggest motivation is change, the change that I want to see in communities and the impact that I want to create within communities that are mostly affected by issues of gender and human rights. And the other last thing that I'd like to talk about is, I also come from communities where there are basically not literate, they're not able to read, they're not able to write, they don't understand these things. So being able to simplify, for instance, they will put a protocol in a local language that they're able to understand is motivation enough for them to push forward. We also have human rights. So there are all these instruments that exist and we don't know about them. So for most of them, it's a surprise when you talk to them about human rights instruments, because they do not know what they are. So I feel at the end of the day, pushing forward, especially for men in this field, is something that is important. There are a few men that are really speaking about issues around gender and human rights and forgetting for the rights of women. But gentlemen, it is important that we speak out for our women. Of course, even men have been abused in homes, we speak truth to power as well. But at the end of the day, we need to be focused enough to create that change in our communities by touching all angles and all areas that need that change. Yeah.
You're amazing. Thank you so much. I am so amazed at this group. There is, oh yes, I am the sister of the chair. Oh yes, Myra Lee Fowler came in and she says, I am the sister of Chairwoman Kyra D. Lee. I love it. Grateful to be present and enjoying this important discussion. Thank you for creating this space for this topic. Looking forward to hearing what next steps. Well, thank you for bringing me in then, Madam Myra, because the next steps are for this program and the ones we have done last week to be cycled at the UN in their media piece. We have a media representative here today, and she's going to cycle these stories. Of course, they're going to be cut down and shrunk to about a 30-minute segment, but it's going to be rounded out to be understood as to you being seen and this voice being heard. It is very important, especially voices of the diaspora, to be heard. The African Union Region 6 is bringing forth a great effort. The UN is opening up offices and dialects and spoken tables that are being built by NGOs, not just the UN offices, but NGOs are coming into the UN, building tables that they are recognizing so that voices like this will come. The Federation of International Gender and Human Rights, as you know, has been doing this now for 9 years as of February 22nd. And we've been at the UN for 5 of those 9 years. And we are doing this inclusively. So we have been given the opportunity to do these programs. We are going to continue in Region 6. We are bringing this forward to other diasporic organizations and events, and we are linking this to the work that we are doing so that it moves forward and we have students that can use this in our archives. We're also expanding Harbor Heritage University, as you see, as you see, there is a QR code. I offer each and every one of you, both here and on the live stream, hit that QR code and see what it is that we are doing. The Director of Research is in front of you, and that's Ambassador Chisala Bwalia. And we're going to be bringing in Madam Kyra Lee into our women's college. We haven't worked that out yet, but she has to be a voice in that college as a proctor, as a teacher, as a professor, something. She has to be brought into the women's college because a voice is necessary and needed. And the pay is going to be deliberate in giving that voice the worth and the value that is necessary. So offering that is to offer the next steps that we are going to continue this spoken word in the diasporatic educational model that we have in the field of the BIPOC initiatives that we're putting forward, and putting this into our indigenous languages that we speak at our current culture clusters that we have. And we are going to bring this forward because it is necessary to start establishing the recognition of the gaps and bringing that together so we can close this before I close my eyes. And we can close this measurably before all of us are away from here. And that will be the context of positioning that Dr. Boualia talked about. And that will be the understanding as to what we're going to be doing. And this is all going to be brought to you because, as Madam Kyra said, because there is a reason. There is a reason, and we are called to do this. And we cannot look at this as an other problem. We cannot look at this as someone else to do. We cannot look at this, oh, someone else will get it done. We have to do it, and we have that responsibility and accountability, and we have the talent in the room, as you see, to get this done. So I want to thank each and every one of you for coming. I want to recognize those that are on the Zoom call here. Cindy Woodruff, thank you so very much for coming. Madam Kristen Carruthers, I thank you so very much. Madam Myra Lee Fowler, thank you so very much. And I see Chola, but I don't know if that's, I don't know the pronouns to address properly. And then there's a Kay Stewart. So thank you so very much for coming. Thank you for being here. I want to also thank immensely Fordham University School of Law, who has supported this program and been to almost every one of our lectures. I think it's the professor's way to not have to teach that day, but they have been to all of our lectures. NYU students have been coming on individually. And of course, Columbia University has come in, and they are going to be doing the program in the future. So we're going to check back with Madam Lee in a few weeks and see how that's coming, and then see when the date is for that documentary. Documentas, as it's called. I love that word. And we are going to be seeing many, many more paths to gender and human rights solutions. So I want to thank Dr. Chisala Boualia, who has been here from the Republic of Zambia, Madam Kyra Lee. I want to thank you. And Queen Mother, we couldn't have you today, but you are here in our hearts and always in our minds and spirits, so that we will continue this legacy together. So on behalf of the Federation of International Gender and Human Rights, I bid you a fair adieu, and I welcome you to follow us at fire.com, fire.org and Harbor Heritage University .com, and look for all of this on the UN News, and it will be streamed live for the month of April. So we'll talk soon. Be well.